We all understand, for you to do your jobs, you need Congress to pass budgets. For us to do our jobs, we need you to give us the details and to be accountable to American taxpayers. And so I gotta say, it's an extraordinary dereliction that as you sit here, you cannot account for billions of dollars that have already been spent.
You're briefed on munitions, the numbers
Mr. Hegseth, you have testified that American taxpayers need to know where their dollars are going. And as you sit here today, you can't provide us with a basic answer to the most simple question that you should be able to answer to each and every American
You're
taxpayer.
asking a question to an answer with an answer you already have.
You said you've got a crack economic team that's looking at the impacts of this war on the American taxpayer, and you can't answer this basic question. That should shock the conscience of every American.
Before we get into this, hit like and subscribe to The Red Verdict, because we cut through political theater and give you the facts they don't want you focusing on.
Chair, and I recognize a gentlelady from New Hampshire, Ms. Goodlander.
I want to thank our witnesses for being here today, and I want to begin by getting right to it, since my time is limited, on this $1.5 trillion budget request. Mr. Hegseth, you testified last year and you testified again today that you will be accountable for every American taxpayer dollar that comes to the department, where it goes and why. That's really important since, as it's been pointed out, the department has failed 8 audits. The department remains on GAO's high-risk list. The Inspector General just last year alone identified billions of dollars that could have been put to better use, and in questioned costs, that is spending that raised red flags. So this is a crisis right now in accountability of where the dollars of the American taxpayers who are in the middle of a cost crisis, where this money is going. I want to ask about your war in Iran. And Mr. Hurst, you testified earlier today that $25 billion has been spent to date. I just want to clarify that that is money, that taxpayer dollars that have been spent already in this war.
$25 reflects the costs of the war, right? So we've already spent the dollars on munitions and things like that. So we're factoring in cost of munitions expended into that total.
So how much of that has gone towards munitions? Does that include the munitions that have been spent to date?
Yeah, that reflects the munitions that have been spent to date and other operational costs.
Can you give us a breakdown of what those costs are?
We'll work to get you guys a product that has a detailed breakdown of those costs.
Yeah, my concern here is, Mr. Hegseth, you've testified repeatedly that you're going to be accountable for each and every American taxpayer dollar that you spend, that you're going to be accountable for the rationale. Here we are 60 days in to your war of choice in Iran, and you can't give us an answer on a breakdown of the basic breakdown of American taxpayer dollars that have been spent in your war of choice? That's a question for Mr. Hurst. Right now, as you sit here now, you
We're
cannot.
happy to give you a breakdown. We'll provide you a product after this hearing.
Well, I would love for you to give us this breakdown now and explain to us, was this unbudgeted costs, or was this something the department planned for in advance, since you were appropriated $1 trillion last year?
The department deals with contingency operations all the time within its normal budget.
So this was not budgeted for. My point here is, you know, and General Kane, you've testified to this. We all understand, for you to do your jobs, you need Congress to pass budgets. For us to do our jobs, we need you to give us the details and to be accountable to American taxpayers. And so I got to say, it's an extraordinary dereliction that as you sit here, you cannot account for billions of dollars that have already been spent.
You're
in this
briefed
war.
on munitions every week. You and your entire staff have every,
asking
just so the
you-
American public know, it's not
Mr.
as if you
Hegseth,
don't have munitions levels.
Mr.
You do
Hegseth,
from us every single week. So
Mr.
you know
Hegseth,
exactly the numbers you're talking
Mr. Hegseth,
about.
you have testified that American taxpayers need to know where their dollars are going. And as you sit here today, you can't provide us with a basic answer to the most simple question that you should be able to answer to each and every American
You're
taxpayer.
asking a question to an answer with an answer you already have.
No, I'm asking you for a breakdown where you said you will be accountable for every taxpayer dollar. You cannot tell us where any of the $25 billion in taxpayer funds that have gone to fund your war of choice in Iran. And I look forward to getting details from our witnesses after this hearing, because the American taxpayers need to know. Mr. Hegseth, can I ask you, do you know what the average cost of a gallon of gas was in this country on February 28th?
Well, it depends on where you live. If you live in California, it's $8.
$4.83. Do you know what the average cost of a gallon of gas is today?
Much higher in California.
$4.23. I gotta say, Mr. Hegseth, you said you've got a crack economic team that's looking at the impacts of this war on the American taxpayer, and you can't answer this basic question. That should shock the conscience of every American. General Kane, I want to come back to something, a really important principle, and my time is limited. You testified to an important and bedrock principle of American law, that our service members follow lawful orders and lawful orders only. Is that right? Do you agree with the statement, quote, "The military won't follow unlawful orders"?
I do.
Mr. Hegseth, do you agree with that statement?
I do, but understand what you're insinuating in a partisan point.
I'm not. I'm actually quoting you directly, Mr. Hegseth, from April 12th, 2016. And I appreciate that on the record, you've clarified this important principle of American
Gentlelady's
law.
time's expired. Chair, I
Let's get straight into this, because what you just heard is a classic example of how these hearings play out in real time. On the surface, this looks like a serious concern about accountability. You've got Representative Maggie Goodlander pressing Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth over a reported $25 billion spent in a conflict with Iran. And let's be clear, asking where taxpayer money is going is absolutely valid. Conservatives have been demanding that for years. But here's where you need to separate substance from performance. What you're seeing here is less about getting answers in the moment and more about creating a political narrative. Because anyone who understands how the US Department of Defense operates knows that real-time, line-by-line cost breakdowns for active military operations are not typically presented in a hearing setting on demand. That data exists, but it's compiled, reviewed, and often classified or delivered in detailed reports later. So when the question is framed as, "You can't account for a single dollar," that's not entirely accurate. It's a rhetorical strategy designed to land a punch, not necessarily to reflect how defense accounting actually works. Now, let's talk about the bigger issue: accountability. The Pentagon failing audits. That's real. That's been a long-standing problem across multiple administrations. Conservatives should absolutely care about that. Waste, inefficiency, and lack of transparency in defense spending are not acceptable. Period. But here's the contradiction you should notice. The same political voices raising alarm about defense spending often support massive domestic spending packages with far less scrutiny. So the question becomes, are we actually serious about accountability across the board, or only when it's politically convenient? Now, on the cost of war. Yes, $25 billion is a serious number, but context matters. Military operations involve munitions, logistics, intelligence, personnel deployment, and ongoing support. These costs are dynamic, and they escalate quickly in any active conflict. That's not new. That's the reality of modern warfare. The real debate shouldn't just be, how much are we spending? But what are we achieving with that spending? That's where the conversation should be focused. Then we get into the gas price argument. Quoting gas prices before and after a conflict is a powerful talking point, but it oversimplifies a complex global market. Energy prices are influenced by supply chains, global production, OPEC decisions, and geopolitical instability, not just one single policy or one single conflict. That said, Americans do feel the impact. High gas prices, rising costs of living, those are real pressures. But if you're going to make that argument, you also need to acknowledge the broader global factors at play. Now, let's address the final part: lawful orders. Both General Keane and Secretary Hegseth reaffirmed a critical principle: the military follows lawful orders only. That's not controversial. That's foundational to the American system. But notice how quickly that question turns into an insinuation. That's another example of how these hearings are often less about clarification and more about setting up political implications. So here's the bottom line. There are legitimate concerns here: Pentagon accountability, cost transparency, strategic clarity. Those are real issues that deserve serious attention. But what you're also seeing is how these hearings are used to shape public perception, score political points, and create headlines rather than deliver full context. And if you're watching this as an informed viewer, you need to recognize both sides of that equation. Demand accountability, yes. Demand transparency, absolutely. But don't fall for oversimplified narratives that ignore how complex national defense actually is. If you want real analysis without the spin, subscribe to The Red Verdict.